I'll collapse in bliss when I arrive, when I arrive, when I arrive, when I arrive.
Hey man,
Hey
see you.
man, how are you?
I like this. Throw a better
Oh, you like
beard than
this?
I
You
do.
haven't seen this. We haven't
Yeah.
spoken in a little while, have we, in real life?
No,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, we're sitting here on the eve of release, essentially, aren't we? Of a Collapse in Bliss.
yeah. That's right.
Man,
Yeah,
that's been a long
crazy.
road for you.
I guess so. I mean, it's been the kind of creative focus of this year. In terms of like projects that I've done, it hasn't been like it's always so much work. Every record is so much work, but this one just happened over such a shorter period of time. So it's not like when I finally put out the last full album, that was years, in the making. And Steve Approval took a year and a half. Like that felt much more arduous than this has. So I'm in pretty good nick considering. Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking very well. And yeah, it's been about 4.5 years since we've spoken.
Oh my God.
When we pressed this baby, remember this one?
Yes, I sure do. Yeah, you can't see mine, but I've got my copy stuck up on the wall above my desk
Well, they've
somewhere.
become.
Oh, you can see it. That
Oh,
little
there it is.
square
Yeah, yeah.
is
Next to
it.
when we were young. Well, yeah, it's we're getting screams for a repress every day, so that's a testament to your popularity.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. It's nice to know the it still lives. Yeah, 10 years on.
Yeah, man, and then that, yeah, it's turning 10, isn't it? That's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, it is. Time's weird. It goes quickly and slowly at the same time. But it's amazing it is really amazing that people still engage with something that you did a long time ago. Do you know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
you can never really tell if it's gonna have life beyond a moment. But I guess for some people, it was a moment in their life or whatever, so they still have an attachment to it.
An
Yeah.
attachment to it. You'll be leaving a legacy when you eventually depart. But so you've released another album since then, and you're sitting on you're poised for the release of your fourth one overall. How are you feeling? What have you learned in all those years?
Yeah, it's such a good question. This Enterprise has felt very different. This album has felt very different to any other that I've made, and I, in large part, attribute that different feeling to the fact that I have these other bodies of work to draw from, like and memory of the experience of making them. And like you'll remember doing Sea of Approval was so new, that whole process. I'd been making music for 10 years by the time I made that record, but that process of sitting in a room and coming up with a vision and working alone and doing technical things I hadn't done before, like that was really new and it was really overwhelming and just took so much brain power to do even the basics. Um, and then People You Love was like a very different process, more collaborative, had more people involved. Um, and then there was, the other music that I released, singles and Golden Boy EP, and each one of those projects had really clear lessons embedded in them, like really clear learnings, and it gave me a lot to reflect on about how to work but the insights that emerged out of doing that work weren't just related to music, they were also related to life around music as well in a really major way. For
Yeah.
me, they've never been separate. Uh, they've been, I guess this is probably the case for most artists, but the projects that you work on become quite life-defining events. Like they become chapters of your life and represent and express many of the things you're learning and going through and difficulties you're facing and growth that you're going through. And so I had this time with Collapse and Bliss, just more of those experiences to draw from and a bit more. It's an ongoing process. It definitely is. I would never stand on top of my mountain and say that I knew anything for sure or that I had figured it out or that I was an expert. And I think anytime you start to talk like that, you just get smacked down again pretty quickly. But I think because I've done We're Too Young, Phantom Pains, Sea of Approval, People You Love, and Golden Boy, there's just a lot more to draw on, and I've had so many more failures to draw from as well, more personal failures within the creative process. I have this will sound hoity-toity, but I just mean it in context of the music, as I know the kind of mistakes. I kind of know myself a bit better, or know some of the mistakes I tend to make, and because I'm more sensitive and aware of when I'm starting to make those mistakes, like going down certain rabbit holes, I think I was able to just sidestep them earlier. So if I found myself working on a song, for instance, that just wasn't coming together, but I thought really should come together. Like I thought this is a really important song. This has got to go on it. But after 3 or 4 days of working on it and not making progress with it, not making meaningful progress, once upon a time I might have just gone, no, I'm going to keep smashing through this until I solve it. But because I've done that enough in the past and learned that it often doesn't yield anything good, I was able to, in that case, stop working on it
Mm.
without being conflicted about that,
Yeah.
and let go of many ideas I thought were really good. And so there are many examples of that, like recognizing my own foibles and when they were starting to manifest sooner. And so that allowed me to just keep moving stay in flow a bit more, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? Flow. And is
Yeah.
this is the room that we're looking at where Collapse and Bliss
Yeah. Yeah. This
unravels?
is it. Yes, this is it here.
The room of that has seen many iterations of those songs, no doubt, and lots of madness from Andy Bull himself. And
Yeah.
now, now that
Yeah.
sounded one of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you today is I really wanted to draw some attention to this process that you've made. There's no one like you out there at the moment, Andy. It's actually close to insanity, isn't it? A self-imposed deadline to make an album within what 60 days, and you did it in 40 or something like that. Uh,
Yeah.
a family at home, a job, and you're up
Yeah.
late making this record.
Yeah. Yeah. It
How,
sounds wild, even
yeah,
like even just out loud. And I only finished it a couple months ago, but even now it's like, whoa, that was pretty ambitious.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's your, I mean, at some of your wildest mental moments, I imagine that you could have been any form of like, this is the best thing in the world, this is the worst thing in the world. I'd never want to do this again. I'm going to do this a lot more.
Yeah.
Is that true?
You have all those thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You have all those thoughts. I think the reason for doing it in such a short amount of time is just that, well, I guess I don't ever want to spend, well, I again, I got to be careful because I might change my mind. But I don't think that I ever want to spend 2 years working on a record again, or 4 years, or 5 years, or even, yeah. There's just too much other. I have too much other responsibility now, working on music can be quite consuming of your imagination and your mental power. And so I wanted to just make sure that this album, working on this, didn't come at the expense of the rest of my life,
Mhm.
and that it didn't drag me away, didn't separate my attention from the rest of my life. So that if I were at work, I wasn't thinking about music. If I were with my children, I wasn't thinking about music. It was really important because I really hate that feeling of being in two places at once, and it fills me with a lot of guilt, not being present. So I knew that this record would have to be compatible. Making this record would have to be compatible with my normal life. And I would also have to do it with no resources and completely alone. And so I figured the best answer I had to answer that was, well, listen, just do it as quickly as possible. Limit the scope of the project, limit your tools, make the music simple enough that you could handle all the technical aspects as well as the generative, creative aspects. Because if I have to mix it, like I'm not super experienced as a mixer or a master. I've done it a little bit, but not, nothing like what a professional mixer would do, making a record a week sort of thing. So I was like, I know I've got limitations there. So I have to make this music simple enough that me, even with my limitations, I could execute.
Mhm.
Um, and then that kind of forms some scaffolding around what the music would be aesthetically as well. So how can I make it feel full and immersive, as simply as possible? And part of that is also, can I do this over a shorter period of time as possible? Because I think if I leave myself more time to work on things, it's actually more time to get lost,
Yeah.
more time to go down rabbit holes. If I felt like I had 2 years to make a record, then I could permit myself to go down a rabbit hole for 3 weeks on a song,
Mhm.
because I know I've got time to do that. But knowing that, I said to myself, listen, I got to have this finished in, like I said, like you said, 60 nights, although it became 40. When I found myself going down a rabbit hole, I was like, after a couple of days, I was like, I don't have time. I just have to move on to another thing. And that also helped me to learn that ideas actually can, if you're in the right state, new ideas can come pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And so you can let go of old ones without the pain, because an equally good idea may just be minutes away if you can sit down fresh again. Like I remember when I first started writing music as a teenager, I wrote so many songs. They weren't necessarily very good, but just sitting at a piano was so inspiring,
Mhm.
and normal chords and really, really cliche chord progressions would felt so inspiring. Um, because it felt new and novel, and
Mhm.
possibilities seemed to just emerge. And you're so excited by the interface with the craft. So I think I was in that space a lot with this record,
Awesome.
just sitting down and being amazed by what came out. Yeah.
And will you store those ideas, those ones that didn't make the cut
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them may go on something else. There's
Yeah.
a couple of really nice songs. So I didn't have I couldn't find the one or two elements that really made it feel
Mm.
as magic as I wanted. And so I might reapproach those for the next album. And then other ones, they might just be those kinds of ideas that
Yeah.
are always the ones that got away. And that I think everyone has those. Um, but it's important not to romanticize them too much. Just keep moving, I think.
Just keep on running.
Just keep on running.
That's it, man. And what was I going to say? Your how many songs did you have going into this process, or am I under the understanding that you wrote most of this while you were recording them, essentially? You built them.
Yeah, I had a couple of maybe lines and verses and things. Like I had the verses to Big Deal already in my mind before I started. And that was uh, oh, and the other nice story is there's a song on this album, I think it's the third from last, and it's called Like a Flame. And that's the only one that sort of existed in a rough form beforehand. And that was around the time. So yeah, this is quirky. That song revolves around a chord progression that I wrote when I was 15. And
Wow.
I've been trying to find an album for that. I've been trying to finish that song since I was 15, and
Wow.
I'm 40. So that's a long time. But that was one of the first things I ever sat down and wrote on a guitar. Because as you know, I'm not really a guitar player, but I wrote that and I thought, man, this is so nice. And I recorded those chords on guitar roughly around the time I was working on Fan of Pains in 2010, I think.
Mhm.
And Nick Weaver, who was alive at the time, played bass with me. And so I had a recording of me playing guitar and piano and Nick playing bass.
Awesome.
But there was no song, there was no lyrics, no vocals or anything like that. It was still just this rough instrumental. But I found those recordings, and um, what I thought was impossible happened, which is a lyric and a melody spontaneously emerged. And I was like, oh, there it is. I've been
Yeah.
waiting, what is it, 25 years? 25 years for this melody. There was no doubt. It wasn't like this could work. It was like, oh, that was the song. That was always the song.
That's it.
And so I wrote it and sang it, and did a little bit of overdubbing of some Mellotron, like Mellotron flute. And then I did a really rough mix, and I thought, I think this is it. And I left it. And then the day of uploading the music, which was only a few weeks ago, uploading for like, the DSPs and everything, I opened up that session and thought, okay, is there anything I can do? This was a really, really rough mix that I did. I'm happy to put this really, really rough mix up, but is there anything I can do to this? And so with a few hours left before uploading, I just did a couple little mix tweaks, added a little effect on this, a couple of things, and I was like, the whole song felt about 30% better, more complete and more detailed. And I was like, I guess that's it. I guess that's it there. I mixed it hours before uploading it. But that was the only other song that kind of had existed in some form before. But just funny to me that I first wrote it when I was 15 and I finished it, quote unquote, an hour before uploading it. So at least, you know what I mean? That's taking the maximum amount of time. But I'm really happy with that. And really, it's really beautiful to me, really very meaningful to me to have that record, given that Nick's playing on it, because he passed away a couple of years ago. So yeah. So that's pretty special, that one. But everything else was improvised on the spot. There's a song, all the lyrics to Big Deal were improvised on the spot. Give and Take was improvised pretty much. There's a song, the second to last one, called For a Time, and that was literally, I made a beat on the drum machine and started playing some chords, picked up a mic and just sang the first thing that came to mind. So that vocal is take number one. Lyrics are all on the spot, melody is all on the spot, and that vocal take is the only one I did for that song. So, and there were lots of moments like that across the record where it just came completely spontaneously, and many more songs I did spontaneously that didn't go on the record as well. But that was crazy to me, like so little thought, no going to different cars and writing out with notepads and trying to change lyrics and all that sort of really tiring arithmetic that goes on. So that was uncanny. Like that's a really uncanny feeling, to feel like you're just getting a complete package and then you just catch it and do some technical tweaks to it.
Yeah,
but I think that characterizes the record overall, I think.
Absolutely, man. It's insane that you can do that clarity of mind still happens after a day of work and being a family man, whatnot. It's absolutely crazy to me. Big Deal, I remember you saying to me late one night on a message somewhere that those lyrics were done quite spontaneously on the spot. That's the one that speaks to me almost directly. It's actually ridiculous how instantly close I can relate to that. But yeah, the album.
It's interesting who said that, actually. The people, I mean, that felt very, that when I wrote that, it, like I say, even though it was improvised, I felt like it was very personal to me. And I think that's been the feedback lots of people have had. We all have a version of that story, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe that's.
It's, I was speaking to a buddy yesterday who, for instance, came really close to like landing a permanent position at Saturday Night Live, and then it didn't work out. And he was saying that song like really, really triggered him. And I was like, that's so interesting, like even people who seem really well put together and like happy and attractive and successful have those stories.
Yeah. Our self-portrait's probably quite similar to, depending on who the person is, quite similar to someone who's an artist or an SNL, potential or not. The concept of Collapse in Bliss, obviously that's a phrase in itself, and a beautiful song, by the way. My gosh, it's just unraveled. I've listened to this album so many times now leading up to this chat, and that one is the one that just keeps going and going, which I assume
good.
I assume that's the single to go with the album, and
it's the single, the title track.
It's
perfect. So that's, thanks, man. I can tell you that. So that song kind of I guess ironically addresses ideas of um, belonging or status or success or something like that, which is that ongoing theme. I think the search for significance is a really evergreen one, but it's meant to be, I guess it's kind of an ironic lyric, and it's sort of addressing ideas that I had when I was in my late teens or 20s about making something of myself. And because it addressed ideas that really propelled me for quite some time in my own life, I that it seemed to work to me to bring that song to life in a slightly demented um, early 2000s R&B sort of way. So it's a little different to some of the other songs on the record, but um, I have this memory of being in Los Angeles, and I must have been 20 years old. And as a suburban Australian kid, going to Los Angeles is quite a it's quite a funny and strange place to go. I remember going to Melrose markets and paying my dollar coin entry to get in, and the guy at the entry to the markets goes, "You got a great look," and it was so funny to me that someone would say that to someone on the street. And me and my friends had this laugh about like it's such a hilarious phrase. It was just so antithetical to the world in which I got to say to a stranger, "You got a great look." And so I was drawing on memories like that, like I want to stand where I wait in the Starbucks line because I remember drinking Starbucks in Los Angeles, be told that my look could make a starlight shine. I want brunch in LA, my exes to cry, heavens to shine, a personal light. So it's all quite ironic. But I thought this is because that's the genesis of the song. It would be nice to revisit some of those like early 2000s R&B music, like Neo. Because I remember on that trip, I met the guy who mixed the Neo record, for example, and some of those sorts of sounds, but bring them back in a slightly demented, ironic way. So it's the one track on the album that has those kinds of qualities most overtly, I think. I hope that comes across to people that it's sort of a revisiting of these ideas, but through a slightly demented lens.
Well, yeah, no, it didn't come across to me. It was just an amazing song, and it beautifully. Of course, you've got, with your with your good look and your magical energy, Andy, you've always had this thing going on. You know that you've got all these amazing stories, haven't you? Sitting next to Ben Folds in a cafe and Kanye West
Yeah,
taking over your studio for a moment and meeting
yeah,
Beyonce's dad and all these crazy, crazy
yeah.
things. I mean, now as an older fellow that's not 20 anymore, what do you think that is? Is it just a nice big open heart, or what do you think it is?
Just luck and chance, and also, you're never really far from these. You're never really as far from these situations as you think. It is a small world. I happen, many of those things happened in New York or Los Angeles. That's just where those things go on. The Ben Folds thing happened around the corner here, but I don't know. It's just chance and kind of naive optimism, thinking that any of that was possible. I'd be much less likely to imagine ending up in those situations now. But as a kid, in your 20s, you're like, why not? It's like,
Yeah.
you just think that's what the world is. I don't know. And so maybe there's something about there's a kind of magnetism that comes with being open and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And as well, when you're young, you've got all this potential, and the industry is hungry for potential, and they'll meet anyone really. So I guess I had a voice, and I had a passion, and there was a certain energy in the music I was making, and maybe just a confluence of those things, and some people advocating for me, and then a bit of good luck. But all of these things they're all kind of by stories though. Like they're just sort of funny anecdotes now.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but they do make for fun stories. But the thing I guess I would want to say to anyone is that, you know, we can idolize people and environments that seem to be glamorous and successful and important, but like really, it's our own lives and our own friendship and our own environments that really are important. You know what I mean? Like you just it's the thing to keep in mind is that your own life is special, even if it doesn't look special. You
Of
know,
course, yes.
like life doesn't have to look glamorous next to be deeply meaningful. But you know, you're on the search for glamour and significance and excitement and all that sort of stuff when you're young, and you can sometimes rush with these people in these situations, and it's inspiring and
Yeah.
feels crazy at the time and
Yeah.
makes for nice. Yeah.
Well, your story is one to tell at some point one day, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. I've been doing writing, so maybe that'll coalesce into something.
absolutely, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be very cool. Now, what's a special moment on this record for you? You've explained Collapse and Bliss, which I'm very grateful for, that early 2000s neo soul sound. I appreciate that very much. But on this record, more so than the average artist, you've had some very intimate times with these songs. What's something that on playback now, you would listen to and give yourself a little silent cheer?
And the whole thing, I've listened to the whole thing only once. And the songs are still pretty fresh to me. Like they're still, if I listen through now, because it all happened very quickly, I don't necessarily know all the details that are in there, even though I focused on them intently at the time. A lot of them have already, like, I haven't overplayed it to myself. So when I listened to it the other day, I was struck pleasantly by the sense of this music unfolding in a certain space and time. And the kind of there's this I guess there's a sort of a naturalness with it, and there's nothing there that feels like it's striving too hard to be something that it's not. So all of it, the whole record to me feels like one song in a way. And I could say something special about every song. They all feel really significant. They all are just little offerings, but the whole process felt significant. The outcome feels significant to me. And I've never felt quite like this about a body of work upon finishing it. That's not to say it's going to be successful or that it's the best thing ever or any of that, but certainly my sense of like um, having a clear conscience about it. Like I showed up, I got my instructions, and I did what I was told, and I didn't argue with the gods too much about it. And that's a kind of a relief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're in a great space, it would seem. I mean, it doesn't feel like an album striving for anything more than exactly what it is. It's a gifted lad in a room resting on his laurels a little bit, this uncanny talent for beautiful voice, and you know what I mean? It really sums you up quite perfectly in a way, doesn't it?
Oh, it's interesting. I'm pleased with it. I don't know. The scary thing is, could I ever do it again? I don't know. Like it was because it was a pretty amazing experience. I don't know if I'll ever have one quite like that again. But having said like that, I was pretty pleased to finish it because even though it didn't take very long to do, it did come at the expense of a lot of sleep, and it's still a huge amount of work, and it is still really taxing in a way to do all this. Um, and I got lucky this time because it yielded a lot of music that that felt special. And I guess I'd be anxious. I don't know if I could ever do that again.
Yeah, well, that was one of my
Yeah,
questions. What happens next for you? Do you go back into a studio with a producer ever again after a process like this?
I don't I don't think so, but that's largely because, for someone in my position, you have to be able to do this on the smell of an oily rag. And I really enjoyed working, although I produced the previous record, People You Love, so I was the producer. For half that record, I had musicians with me, and
Mhm.
almost that entire record was mixed by someone else. Um, and it was really nice to have that collaboration in those moments, but it's also really expensive to do that. And I cannot envision a future where I'll have resources to do that ever again. When I was on a label, once upon a time, there were resources for that. But I think I've accepted that whatever I do from now on for the rest of my life will have to come out of my own limitations, of availability and brain power and taste and vision. It's just going to be a little small offering, but hopefully a kind of a pure one that's true unto itself. And as much as I love playing music with other people, it just doesn't happen anymore. I play solo shows. I made this record entirely alone, pretty much, except for that one song. I just cannot see how it would ever be any different. So if I were to do another one, it would be again completely on my own. And I'll keep tinkering, but I'll wait for the clear instruction of what the next thing should be, if there's anything at all. And if nothing comes, then those are my instructions as well. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, my friend, I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ben.
When I arrive.